as the live stream starts on Facebook. My name is Katie Hill. I'm a Global Director for Power and Strategic Initiatives at Liquid Telecom. I'm based in Nairobi. And I've been told to tell you that if you would like to tweet about this event, you should tweet at Business for SDGs. So, to kick things off, I'm going to ask Svein Tore to give his welcoming remarks and to introduce the panel.
Thank you. Thank you so much. I'm really excited to be here today, and I want to thank each and every one of you for joining us. I'm just quickly going to introduce the people that we have on stage here. My co-host today is Strive Masiyiwa, and I met Strive for the first time in 2015. I was only 1 week into the job at Yara when I met him, and you know this feeling when you meet people and you immediately get this sense that this is someone that you really want to work with, and Strive is such a person. And you know, his merits, they are in a league of their own. He has revolutionized digital communication in Africa, and I'm really excited, and I think it's fantastic that we're now joining forces to think about digital in the context of farming. And in the past 3 years, we've met several times, and we've discussed together how can we lift productivity in agriculture. And the answer to that has been very clear. It's youth. You have to bring youth into agriculture. But then we also need to communicate a message around this, how forward-leaning it can be, how much digital can play a role in agriculture. And it is really an incredible potential. So it's really great to have you on stage here today, Strive. And we're also joined by Rapelang Rabana, the founder and chair of Rekindle Learning, and Ada Osakwe, the founder and CEO of Agrolay. I think you should give all of them a round of applause. So Africa is at a crossroads right now, and down one road there's increased poverty, there's increased instability. But down the other road, we see entrepreneurs, we see breakthrough technologies, we see ventures, and we see growth. And I think we all know which road we want to head in. And what we want to see is a wave of ideas, a wave of talent, a wave of knowledge, and a wave of opportunities. And today, we're very pleased to launch Generation Africa, and this is about an opportunity to find a clear vision, to create close collaboration. It's about binding commitments. And Strive, I'd like to hand over to you. Why don't you explain what do you think about, or how should we think about Generation Africa?
Well, thank you so much, Sven, and thank you for those kind remarks, and welcome everybody, plus my 3.62 million followers on Facebook who are receiving it right now, live streaming. So it's about you guys, Africa. You know, when we've discussed this initiative, it's really been about opening up our understanding of agriculture beyond primary production. As my good friend Akina Deshina used to say, and continues to say when he was at Agra and now he's head of the African Development Bank, was agriculture is an industry. We must treat agriculture as business. And it's not just about the farm, it's the entire food chain. So around our initiative and our thinking is talking about agri-food entrepreneurship. This is really a call to Africa's entrepreneurs. It's not just about the young people that are in the villages, but it's also about Africa's young entrepreneurs. To say, turn your talent and your energy to the greatest opportunity today. This is $1 trillion industry. What greater opportunity is there? Telecoms isn't this big. Mining isn't this big. Agri-food is the greatest opportunity on our doorstep. We are importing $35 billion of food to supplement our demand. That number will go to 135 by 2025. It's an extraordinary waste of our valuable foreign currency resources. We need to direct our resources towards other things. And we need young Africa's entrepreneurs to step forward now. But they will need our help. I'll stop there for now.
Thank you. Oh, hello. So we're going to have about 30 minutes for a panel before we break out into the discussions at the table. So Ada, I'd like to start with you. You have a really unique perspective here from being an agri-food entrepreneur, investor, and working in the Nigerian ministry on these issues. What inspired you to go into agri-food entrepreneurship, and what do you think can inspire other young people across the continent?
Yeah, thank you, and it's a pleasure to be here. And I just want to commend this Generation Africa initiative. I read the report, and if you haven't, please download it. I believe it's available online. It's spot on in terms of what is required to get our young people activated in this sector. What inspired me to go into this space? I think for me it was just about not talking anymore and just doing. I had worked for a number of years with the African Development Bank in development financing. I moved on to private equity investing, and then worked with Akin, your friend, at the Federal Ministry of Agriculture in Nigeria, working on policy. And I can tell you in the 4 years, the number of young people who came into my office saying, we're so inspired, Akin, he's so cool. He's making agriculture cool again. I have a farm, or my father has some land. I want to start farming. And these are folks who had only thought about banking jobs before then. So I was moved. I was moved in a way that I was like, I had done infrastructure finance for so long, then private equity, which is sector agnostic, and suddenly I found a way that this is a sector that not only can you potentially make money by keying into the fact that you could suddenly become a net exporter of food. Instead of importing over $40 billion worth of food on the continent, we can start growing it and sending it out. But it was just a chance for us to also make a difference in a big way. 10 million young people in Africa getting into the workforce, no jobs. Over 60% of them are unemployed. And they all turn to entrepreneurship. Okay, what can I do? I have to feed my family. My mom's at home. I have to do something. But you need to give them a way that it's not just about doing something that's, a job that's full of drudgery, and whatever. It's about, having a dignified job. And the talk about making agriculture a business for me was paramount. And so that's really what was the kicker, the light that helped me move into the space. Having had the private equity experience, I would say I also got quite frustrated and disillusioned by the fact that many people were running around raising big multi-million-dollar funds, sometimes billion-dollar funds. And when you ask, why isn't this money going to young people, they'll tell you, well, we can't, they're too small. Yet the majority of the businesses are those small and growing businesses that need $50,000, $100,000, $250,000 to kickstart it. So there was a mismatch. Where are the instruments, those early stage types of financing instruments that you need? Or not just early stage, but tailor-made, that's really being very conscious about where the deal is. So started Agrolay to more or less do that. did 3 deals, a logistics company, another young girl who was doing dried fruits into a branded product. So she was taking it all the way up to the consumer chain. And then decided to roll up my sleeves and actually start a business. And that was the Newly, which is the fruit and vegetable business that we basically buy fruits and veggies from local farmers. We started off with a cold pressed juice product. After a year, we pivoted into not only doing that, but we've rolled out 5 fast casual restaurants. I call them fresh casual. I'm very focused on nutrition and how do we democratize good for you foods by using what we grow locally. So that's the kicker, and that's what I tell young people all the time as I close out on this opening statement, is that it's not about all the money that has gone into production for so many years to increase yields. And in the end, it becomes a vicious cycle of poverty because the farmers have nowhere else to take it to. It's about how do we even if I have to start at the restaurant point of the chain, and understanding that that's a $3.5 trillion market globally, the restaurant industry. Packaged foods is $2.5 trillion. I walk into Whole Foods, Tesco's, Trader Joe's, I pick up a pasta, I don't see made in Nigeria, I don't see made in South Africa. So we need to change that. And that's what gets people excited, young people excited. And we need to tell those stories to get them inspired.
Awesome. Yeah, you've maybe inadvertently touched on 2 of the key priorities in the report, one being change the narrative, and the companies that you're investing in and building are doing that, and the other is access to capital. I think one of the other 5 priorities is around resources and how do we equip young entrepreneurs to get into agribusiness. And so Rapelang has been an entrepreneur herself many times over, but your current company, Rekindle, is all about digital learning. So if you think about the tools that you've developed and if you think about this problem, how do we pass on those skills and bring young people up the learning curve?
Thanks, Katie, and good afternoon, everyone. It's great to be here. Entrepreneurs are going to need a lot, and I think just being an agri-tech entrepreneur doesn't mean you need anything less than other entrepreneurs are going to require. A lot of the work that we've been doing at Rekindle Learning is really to try and shift how we master new skills and get new knowledge. You know, it's no longer about sitting in a classroom or in a 2-day workshop, but creating micro-learning experiences that one can do on their phone, especially if you are in a remote farm, for example, and learn about new fertilizers or farming techniques and the like. And hopefully we'll get to do a lot more work in agri-tech and amongst sort of the other sectors. And I think those skills or basic sort of knowledge skills is going to be critical for all sort of agri-tech farmers. But I think beyond that, they will need to really master some strong digital literacy skills. I think they're really going to be able to have to understand how to use digital technologies like data analytics and machine learning to farm better, essentially. And I'm seeing some very amazing platforms and applications. One particular one in South Africa called Aerobotics, where they use multispectral cameras on drones to actually take detailed photographs of sort of farms, and then on an application, a farmer would need to be able to read that data that's mapped out there. It's able to identify, where pests are on your farm, able to identify, the level of nutrition, what the expected yield will be based on the canopy size of sort of your crops. And those are digital literacy skills, being able to, access that application, consume that data, and make good decisions for your farm based on that. And being able to identify where you can use what kind of digital technology is going to be crucial for you to be competitive and really cutting edge. And I think imparting some of those skills are going to be crucial, because we do need to speed up our knowledge transfer and the information available to farmers. I think historically our environment has really been struggling because of the lack of, or the paucity of data around farmers, their land, how the crop is going, what happened when, and these digital technologies really give us a lens in real time as to what's really happening, and we need to make sure our farmers sort of get that information. I think the only other element for me, and what the report spoke about, was the inspiration and element of it. I think a lot of the work that we do in entrepreneurship isn't so much the academic and the technical information, but also work on the mindset. Ultimately, to really pursue a career like this, you also need to believe that, one, that you are capable in and of yourself, and that, two, that agri-tech could actually give you a sustainable career for you and your family. These are fundamental beliefs that must actually be deeply discussed and understood, and provide mentorship and role models for people to see that that is possible. Otherwise, we're just, giving information and not working on sort of the limiting beliefs that would actually stop someone getting in.
Awesome. Thank you, Rapelang. And I guess, when people in the more conventional way of thinking about education and skills training, you don't automatically go to the digital skills and the importance of data. And I think, probably all businesses on the continent won't be successful without that next level. And it sort of goes into my next question for Svein Tore around, what are the most disruptive innovations that will be necessary to really have this be not a, small-scale innovation in a cottage industry, but be transformative for employment and economics?
Well, first of all, let me just say that I really get inspired when I hear the stories from Ada and Rapelang on just seeing the opportunities, grabbing those and starting businesses. And there is tremendous, or there are tremendous opportunities out there. But then we have to think about this as agri-business, as Strive said in his opening remarks. $35 billion leaving Africa every year to pay for food that could be used for employment in Africa, and that's going to grow even more in the next few years, up to $100 billion. But it has a huge potential both in Africa, but I see opportunities outside Africa as well, developing technologies to solve issues in Africa that will work elsewhere as well for smallholder farmers in Latin America and in Asia, and also for bigger scale farmers. But looking at what we need now it's technologies to make the everyday life of the farmer simpler. It's incredibly complex to be a farmer because there's so many variables that need to be taken into consideration, and we need to create that reach. And that's where I'm also optimistic, because digital enables that. Strive has pioneered digital communications in Africa. Through that, we can convey messages and also advice on how to do farming easier. And that's an area that I really encourage more innovation and more entrepreneurship among the youth. And then it's connecting farmers to the markets. And also from a personal experience, in this meeting with smallholder farmers that have followed the advice, they have increased their yields by multiples, not just small incremental increases, by 5-6 times, and then there's no market for it. And to see a farmer following in the advice and ending up with the food rotting in the shed, it's just heartbreaking. So innovation that helps to connect farmers with the markets, the logistics part of it, it's an area where we need even more innovation.
Thank you. That's extremely helpful. And I guess to that point around market linkages and the other pieces of the puzzle, Strive, I'm wondering if you can speak about what needs to be done to support small and growing businesses at each stage of that growth, and is being an agri-food business any different from being a business in technology and telecommunications at this point?
That's a good question. And the simple truth is no. What is needed there for the entrepreneurs in the agri-food sector is no different from entrepreneurs in any other sector. What we need to harness right now is what I have been saying about the agri-food sector when we talk about jobs is that it is the low-hanging fruit today. Somebody mentioned earlier on a statistic that there are 10 million young people coming onto the job market in Africa a year. That's roughly about 1 million young people turning 18 every month. That's an extraordinary number of young people to whom we must create jobs. And it's complex. As for policymakers looking around for what are the easiest tools that we can pick up, it is going to be in the agri-food sector, because the demand is there. But the paradox we have is that young people are not going into agriculture. We have a problem that if you go particularly into primary agriculture, it is being done by women, and they're getting older. It's a drudgery. The women that are in agriculture don't have access to land, to ownership of land. And to be honest with you, neither do young people. If you're a young person today and you decide to go into agriculture because you're a skilled person with a passion for agriculture, you may not get to the land except through inheritance. How do as a young man or young woman today who decides, I'm going onto the land, in most African countries, we have not put in place a framework for transparent access to land for young people, let alone young women. Okay, so we've got to break through on policy and begin to make some bold decisions to say, if we're going to get young people into agriculture, well, let's give them land, because that's the primary thing. Let's give them access to land, not free land, but access to land. Because anything you get for free, you may not necessarily value. Okay? We need to open up access to land. And we need to open up access to capital. But before we access capital, you start with skills. You're not born with the skills to farm. I was talking to the Prime Minister of Rwanda the other day. He says, you know, we always think that everybody can farm. Well, it's not true. We're not born farmers, okay? We have to skill up people for modern farming, okay? And how to use the modern tools of farming, including improved seeds, soil health, fertilizer, all that, as well as running those farms, however small, as businesses. So the business side of the game, the business skills of looking after your accounts, your balance sheet, all these things need to come through if we are going to transform agriculture in Africa. So there's a lot of heavy lifting for governments, for donors, for philanthropists to prepare the way for the African agricultural revolution.
Thank you. I think your point around the access to land and the structural challenges that are getting in the way, I find that sometimes a lot of pressure is put on entrepreneurship to sort of be one of the major forces in helping kind of Africa get to the next level of development and growth. And there are some systemic challenges and roadblocks that make it quite hard for entrepreneurs. And you've talked about one around access to land. I just open it up to all of you around, are there other larger structural pieces that we need to move in order to enable young entrepreneurs in agribusiness or food businesses to really take off? If you've seen other
Yes, I'd just like
challenges.
to say the other side of the land issue, because I heard it from so many of the young people saying, we don't have access to land, how do I start? So one of the reasons why I started on the market end by starting a restaurant was to show that this is agriculture. You know, all over our restaurant, you see, you know, local farms, this, you know, and telling the story from that standpoint as well, just to let them know that you can start from that end as well, and then it pulls, especially, but it only makes sense if you're buying from the farm. So with my business, which is now 3 years old, people ask me, do you have a farm? I'll say, no, I have land, but I don't have a farm. Oh, really? Because they hear agriculture and they hear food and they know I'm a proponent for that, and they can't understand how I'm a food entrepreneur and I don't have a farm. I say, but I'm buying from the millions of farmers who don't have markets. I have helped transform lives. I'm building contract relationships. I'm increasing their standards. And definitely, as I scale up and as we are scaling up, it becomes imperative to start thinking about how do I backward integrate in a very deliberate way and start making sure I'm now acquiring something, but it makes sense because now I have a funnel. Even if I then go and say I'm going to buy 10 hectares of land to cultivate pineapples because we use that in most of our products, our juices, it makes sense because suddenly I have an outlet for that. And I just want to add something in terms of the big infrastructure because we're talking digital and I love what you guys are doing in the digital infrastructure space. But I tell everyone that it should be we all need to be thinking tech-enabled in every business we're doing, and you mentioned it, Katie. It has to be tech-enabled. You may see a brick-and-mortar Newly store that has smoothies and wraps, but at the back end, from day one, we've captured data. We've used systems that allow us to know what our customers are buying, who is buying, where are they, the big data analytics you were talking about, so that we can better service them in an urban area that we know is really where many young people are at the same time. So I just think that's a big thing. But very quickly, a challenge on that aspect. My name is not Newly Tech. I'm Newly. So we just closed the seed round last year, and it was difficult. We closed at $1.1 million. But you would think that I had background in private equity. I had done stuff in agriculture, but I know how I had to keep convincing investors. They were like, oh, you have stores. It was tough.
You know, she keeps talking about private equity and so forth. She was a civil servant. And I want to speak to the civil servants out there. Did you hear, Ada? It's time for you to quit your job. Okay? Don't moonlight with agriculture. It's too important for you to be moonlighting and doing it during the rainy seasons, okay? If you want to be like Ada, who just raised $1 million US, she was a civil servant in the Ministry of Agriculture in Nigeria. Wow. How about giving her a clap? So, this is a call to all those people, civil servants. Come on, time for you to be entrepreneurs. Quit your job. Nothing's going to happen to you. You're just going to make a little bit of money, okay?
You asked about some of the structural challenges that may happen in the agri-tech sector, and one particular one that I encountered trying to improve the ecosystem in South Africa was even where farmers do have access to markets, there came challenges in terms of the quality of produce and proving that they had done certain practices and complying with certain standards, particularly when you want to sort of sell into top-end sort of retail chains and sort of grocery stores and things. And traditionally, this is an opportunity where digital analytics can really play a big role, because the old way of doing it was them, sending someone to a farm to accredit it and paying a fortune every 6 months or quarter to say you're verified, you can supply us. And these things were always linked to strong relationships, and it was a closed network and quite hard to get in to those networks that allow you to sell into sort of top-end retailers, because that's how they had built trust. Now I think using data analytics and being able to, have drones check things in real time, it changes how we need to build trust around what's happened on a physical farm, especially the distances that you would have to cover. So now it gives us a new opportunity to allow emerging farmers to not, have to spend 5 years trying to prove a record that they did this and that, they used X amount of fertilizer. You can now actually have real data that proves that. But it requires, the distribution channels and the retailers to be willing to change how they accredit and qualify farmers and their produce, and to move away from the old network that sort of blocked things before.
I just wanted to add that, what we're listening to here are true entrepreneurs, where most people see problems and obstacles. You turn it around, it's a business opportunity, and I think that's what we're trying to promote here as well. Think of all these issues, all these problems. They're really business opportunities if you just take them and run with it.
Another question I have for the panel is, the way that entrepreneurship is actually going to make a dent in the unemployment challenge that we're facing is if the companies scale up to a level where they're employing thousands of people. And I'm curious if you have examples of what you've seen in the past few years of companies that are on that path, just as a real example of where we're headed.
This is the most exciting component of it, because we're talking about entrepreneurship in agri-foods. So you listened to Ada speak a little earlier on. And by the way, a couple of years ago, I featured her as one of the great women entrepreneurs of Africa. Remember that?
Yes, I would never forget that.
So I'm sitting between two rock stars here. and they're both women. Africa is on the way, I can tell you. So, you know, when you look, for example, on the tech side, what we are seeing is entrepreneurs. I was looking at one this morning, which I thought was really interesting, a crowd called Hello Tractor doing something very similar to what we are looking at, which is an Uber tractor, okay? So smallholder farmers will not own tractors, okay? But these young people are developing platforms, just like Uber. So a smallholder farmer with a smartphone needs a tractor, finds a tractor in their district, somebody comes and does the plowing for them, okay? That is a business. They're doing contract plowing. Others are moving into areas around storage, developing storage facilities. Others are coming in and setting up processing factories. Others are coming in and doing renewable energy. You see, all these technologies, AI, cloud computing, they're all coming into African agriculture. And they're coming much quicker than people realize. And those are the entrepreneurial opportunities. But I'm also saying to the African entrepreneurs, if you don't move in, others will. They'll come in from China and they'll come in from Silicon Valley because this is a great opportunity. And it is going to draw people into it. So you better get started.
So Yara today is a company that is 114 years old. We're 17,000 employees and we're operating in 60 countries. But 114 years ago, it was started by an entrepreneur, someone that saw an opportunity in harnessing nitrogen from the air, and that's what started our company. And it was important for the Norwegian economy at the time, and a lot of industries have been able to grow from that initial innovation. Looking at where we are today, we see that we need partnerships to grow. And you can also think of Yara as a partner, but also an opportunity to create scale. We have scale. So if you have a great idea, it is possible to partner. We also have examples of companies that we've bought and integrated into Yara to use these technologies. We're not going to be able to innovate everything ourselves. So it's to really use the collective knowledge to drive farming in the right direction. So we see this both as an opportunity to engage in communities, but also as a fantastic business platform going forward to grow together.
Great. One more question on my side around access to capital, and this would be in agribusiness or beyond. I found, this is a personal view, that sometimes the capital that's coming from outside of the continent doesn't fully understand the market and the context, may be a little more, maybe excessively demanding in due diligence and the timing to actually deploy that capital. And we still aren't seeing in a lot of parts of Africa local funds and some of the high net worth individuals in Africa setting up funds that are investing in entrepreneurs. And I'm curious if what experiences you all have had and how we unlock local capital that truly understands the opportunities and the challenges in the region.
Well, you just raised $1 million. Share us the secret.
Where did you raise from, Ada, for example? Local. Awesome. Well, that's Nigeria.
Local, but you know, it was difficult. But otherwise, when I was with the Ministry of Agriculture, because of that, I helped design a fund that we worked with KfW, the German Development Bank. So we put it together as an SME food fund that was more or less focused on earlier stage capital, so smaller ticket sizes, but funding deals across the value chain. What we did as a government at the time was to not, first of all, take government out of things, right? So it was government-enabled, private sector-driven, as Akin says, Adesina says all the time. So we helped to facilitate it. We put $20 million as a government into this fund. We escrowed it so that when Adesina is not there anymore, when Ada is not there the fund managers could, draw down and have capital calls. Secondly, we made sure we had an RFP process that it was a private manager. So today they're out there. They raised a further, I think, over 70 million, and the total, they closed at 96.3 million. So it's the Fund for Agricultural Financing in Nigeria. They went on to leverage capital from private, from other development finance institutions. They had two sleeves, so it was TA facility, the technical assistance to provide all the training and the mentorship and the soft capital that's required. But I'm not, increasingly, I'm not a big believer in funds, especially for food and agriculture. I at least closed-end funds, I think we need that patient capital, we need the time. So vehicles that think about permanent capital vehicles, longer-term horizons, as and when you go, tailor-made financing, I think is more important to support and drive this industry. And I'll tell the young people out there who think they can go to their banks. Banks are not great for us in agriculture in Africa. With interest rates where they are, because of high inflation, they would rather put the money in treasury bills. It doesn't make sense, and they are risk-averse. So I would encourage young people all the time to think about family and friends, angel investors. And finally, I think this is maybe a wrap up, I just want to give my last comment here, is as we talk about changing the narrative and inspiring people out there, I think we need to do it not in a closed way, but we need to be open about it. It's not just about inspiring the young folks, it's about them knowing that you would go the bat for them and that you're pushing their agenda. Mr. Masiyiwa, I know you do this very well. You speak up. I think we all need to be activists in a way, use our platforms to speak up. Having been growing a business, we've gone through a lot. I've had the government demolish one of my stores once, and we had to rebuild. We've gone through the pain and the challenges that people know in Africa we go through. But we speak up, and you use it, and you use the platform we have and the networks we have, and being right here in Davos to challenge and hold our leaders and those responsible accountable. So I think that we all, one way or the other, have to be activists. And your 3.2 million followers, is it 3.2, sir, on
3.62.
3.62, precisely. The majority of them are young people, are youths.
You're not one of my followers.
I'm one of your followers.
They're like you.
So I think that's powerful in its sense, and what you do to inspire is powerful. Thank you.
Well, let me just quickly close on this issue. Because obviously, you recall when we were working with Agra and the Nigerian government, I remember we went and had a meeting with the central bank governors. We had a meeting with the central bank governor, the CEOs of all the Nigerian banks, and it was organized by Agra. And we gave them a simple statistic. We said to them, 70% of the jobs in Nigeria are in agriculture. But 1% of your lending is to agriculture. 1%, which is almost universal across Africa, outside of maybe South Africa and a couple of other countries. You've got to raise this figure. They said, okay, we have no security. So we designed the risk-sharing platform, okay? And that opened up, I think, about $3.8 billion for Nigerian smallholder farmers. Okay, so there are policy interventions that you can do as governments. But the cost, so it's not just access, we also have to look at cost. If European agriculture was financed like African agriculture, you'd all be hungry, I can guarantee. The cost of money for African agriculture, it astounds me that they actually managed to fund anything. Okay, so we need to address the cost of the financing, never mind the access. Okay, you say you're not ready to give title deeds, fair enough, then you guarantee the land. You guarantee the loans so that the farmers can access the money. So we've got to do policy intervention. But when we come to the entrepreneurial side, of course we need equity to be available. We cannot develop mass entrepreneurship in agribusiness with venture capitalists and impact investors coming out of the United States. It's not real, it's not sustainable. What we need to do is to develop our own ecosystem of venture capitalists, of angel investors, of private equity funds, which means we need to put a framework that draws our own pools of capital, and they are there. We have insurance companies, we have pension funds that can also be drawn into providing capital for the sector. So the ecosystem necessary to drive agribusiness, like any other industry, right up to stock exchanges. Our stock exchanges do not support young entrepreneurs, upcoming companies. They're a place you go to show when you've made it. How about using stock exchanges as a place to raise capital? I thought that's what they're there for. So we've a lot of work to do as Africans to open up this space, but in the meantime, we could use some help. And it's not, in this case, we're not asking for aid. Okay, we're not asking for handouts. We're asking for a hand up. Okay, help us to get this engine going. Okay, we need catalytic investment. You do not need to build a wall in the middle of the Mediterranean Sea. It'll be very expensive, let me tell you. It'll cost you more than Trump's $25 billion. Just give us the money and we'll give it to our young people. Okay?
So I know I will get in trouble if we don't wrap up, but I want to hear final thoughts from the two of you. But I want them to also invite me back again, so don't get me fired.
In terms of the issue of sort of access to capital, I did spend some time with sort of the agricultural sectors of some banks, and this is why I refer back and I keep pounding on digital technologies, and it really came down to sort of the paucity of data. Ultimately, they were only comfortable to lend money to commercial farmers where it was worth deploying someone to go and analyze and do the face-to-face assessments and the risk assessments and things like that. And without more information as to what the smallholder farmer was doing, it's impossible to sort of provide the financing. And this is the data information loop is actually quite critical, because if the farmer can't provide real-time data in terms of the progress of their yield and their good farming practices, then the retailer or the distributor can't commit to buy. Then the insurance can't commit to provide insurance, and the financier can't commit the capital. And this is why the transparency of data, what is happening on the ground, is so critical to be able to open up those channels to finance and look at de-risk the whole process by providing that data.
I think it's time to engage everyone here. So I just wanted to echo what Strive said, that don't think of this as aid. This is a tremendous business opportunity. So let's think about it in that way.
Awesome. Okay, thank you, everyone. Thank you, this panel. And we have about 30 minutes. You have a few discussion leaders at your table who will introduce themselves and the topic for discussion over lunch. Ask you to please, co-create, share your experiences, ideas, think big. We won't have a formal readout from every table. There's no homework. So just, keep an open mind as you discuss.